Hey, this is Punt Then Wine. I'm here for another matchup deep dive. Today I've got Matt Hayashi. He's a brewer who's made a lot of interesting decks on MTGO. Probably, I would say you're most famous for this sort of like Ship of Theseus mono red prowess deck, right? Like it started as mono red prowess, but now you don't. It's gotten changed so much you don't even have any prowess creatures anymore, and you're more like a red mid range deck at this point. Would you say?
Yeah, I think that would be a fair way to describe it. And actually, I'm kind of dabbling in trying to have different variations of mono red kind of going at the same time, kind of developing multiple different decks now. So I actually do kind of have like a quasi prowess deck and like an actual dedicated prowess deck kind of on the side. But you're right, the main deck I've been developing just kind of morphed into kind of like a mono red Jund type of deck. You know, like Jund if you basically take out the black and the green type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
mean, it sort of makes sense. I mean, Blood Moon is a hell of a magic card, and then you have this ability to play with Blood Moon and play this very grindy game plan with Seasoned Pyromancer, and Fury is a very nice pickup for this sort of archetype as something that can sort of, you know, stop early game problems and just be an amazing threat in the late game. One thing I notice, I've seen a lot of your lists, like your Jangatha lists or your ones without companions. You've done some like Luris Black and Luris White decks. And I think one thing that like always makes me immediately like recognize a deck as a Matt Hayashi deck is usually the mana base. Like you're usually trying out all different types of things with your mana base to try and figure out what is the best combination of lands to get value out of your lands, right? Like right now you're doing Blast Zone and Den of the Bugbear, as well as one Castle Breath and one Shinka, which can give first strike to Ragavan. But I've seen you do things. I've seen you do things like cycle lands. I've seen you do things like Radiant Fountain. I've seen you do things like the one damage land. So what's your thought process on right now the way you built this mana base?
right. So the reason why I play the lands that I do is uh, they kind of help out with kind of where the format's at, particularly in the moment. I think Radiant Fountain was kind of a concession, A, to Burn being kind of all over the place at one time, and B, also at the time, I don't think I really had a good sideboard option kind of lined up that I felt I could justify playing because I can't I don't didn't feel like I could quite justify playing something like Dragon's Claw because A, it conflicts with Obosh and it really only comes in against Burn. I mean, I guess that's B. It really only comes in against Burn. Doesn't really have much application anywhere else. Even in the mirror match, it can be kind of lackluster because like you got these big creatures smacking for a bunch of damage, and Dragon's Claw gaining like 20 life is not necessarily all by itself going to swing the game. But now that I actually found Trinisphere, which I'm not 100% sure if that's going to be the final card I settle on in this list. This actually was Chalice right before I kind of brainstormed and somehow, actually I think it was I was reading like a Star City Games article or something like that about like taxing effects or something. I can't remember exactly how it is. I thought of Trinisphere, but yeah. Anyway, that's why the Trinisphere is here. It so far it actually is not doing bad against Burn, and it's actually something I feel like I could justify playing because A, it doesn't click with Obosh. B, it can come in against other matches than Burn, and I guess yeah, like I don't know what C I don't know what C was, but yeah, it's so bottom line is I feel like this list because Burn frankly still is everywhere. I feel like this list doesn't necessarily need the Radiant Fountains anymore because hopefully that's going to do the heavy lifting there. But Blast Zone is more or less a concession to two things, to one thing specifically, which is Hammer Time, and another thing more generally, which is kind of artifacts and enchantments. Um, but yeah, particularly Hammer Time. This deck actually kind of needs the Blast Zone. Otherwise, like it's really I don't want to say impossible, but it's really extremely unlikely to beat Hammer Time without Blast Zone because at the end of the day, if they just have a bunch of hammers just sitting around, then then those pure steel paladins come down, and then they force you to kind of two burn spells, one to deal with whatever they equip to, and then like another one to deal with the pure steel paladin itself. And the blast zone is just sweet because it deals with all the Sigarda's aids and the hammers all in one fell swoop, and a lot of times it's pretty hard for them to recover after that. Ratchet Bomb kind of does that heavy lifting in the companion list or the Gigantha list, but of course, since we're playing Obosh, I mean, I have in the past played Ratchet Bomb, even though it disables Obosh, but Blast Zone is generally much preferable because, of course, it does it. It's a little bit of a nombo with Blood Moon, but generally, if you're able to figure out what matchup you're on early enough, you can kind of hold Blood Moon back or pitch it with Valakut or Fury or Seasoned Pyromancer, and like you can adjust your play accordingly. And I think it's pretty essential for that. But also, like, the deck really just doesn't have any interest artifacts and enchantments without it. And most of the time, that's not that huge of a deal. But every once in a while, you run into I don't know, something like a Pillow Fort deck or something that produces like that 5-mana enchantment that makes creatures not able to attack unless they pay like mana equal to the number of enchantments you control, and then like Leyline of Sanctity or something combined with that, and then it's like a soft block. I don't know.
Yeah, I can definitely see. Modern is a place where people play, whatever they want to play. I mean, there's the top decks, and then there's also just everything. And I think Blackstone, like you were kind of saying, it works in both of those contexts, because
Right.
Hammer is all over the place. Blaststone seems like a slam dunk, amazing include against Hammer. Just like they have so many 1-drops. Like, you're even getting their Springleaf drums along with their, Sigarda's aids and their Shadow Spheres and their hammers. So like,
and their Esper Sentinels too. Those
yeah,
things can be annoying.
yeah, those can be really annoying. And so that seems really great. And then like you're saying, just the fact that it says any non-creature permanent, there's always, you run into Modern, you're gonna run into somebody playing whatever interesting or weird card that they want to play, and sometimes you need an answer to a Sphere of Safety or a Leyline of Sanctity, or whatever, like you were saying. Sometimes
Yeah.
you need an answer to just something. And it's also, I imagine, really good against, like, if anybody's still playing Death Shadow. It seems like a great way to deal with Death Shadow, which can also be kind
Yeah.
of hard. And then, like,
I was just going to say, it says non-creature. I mean, it says non-land, not non-creature. So can't forget about Death Shadow and Pro Red. Don't forget about that too.
Yeah. So things like the core Firewalkers of the world, or the new one that exiles the graveyard. I can't think of the name. I'm sure you are familiar with playing against it.
Yeah. Core. I mean, Sanctifier and Vac or something like that.
Yeah. And then also, I mean, I imagine you've probably killed some, Dragon Rage Channelers and Ragavans with it as well throughout.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's sometimes it has to sweep my own Ragavan along with it, but
Yeah.
if they've got a bunch of Dragon Race channels, that's a trade well worth making.
Yeah. So you've got 4 main board relics right now. So those, I imagine, a lot of that is Murktide and Living End are the matchups where those are shining really right now.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I mean, and Esper and Orzhov Reanimator,
Mm-hmm.
and also just Dragon Race Channeler just can help manage the graveyard. One thing to keep in mind about Dragon Race Channeler actually is that the attack these turn of Fable clause can actually be used to our advantage, because if they, especially if they're not kind of keen to it, if we have a relic up and the 1 mana extra to activate it, and we've got like a Seasoned Pyromancer with like a couple tokens or something, unless they got like 3 removal spells, we can put them in a situation where they're going to have to attack into like our Seasoned Pyromancer and its tokens, and then crack it, and then they're making it. Then suddenly they're making an attack they don't want to make. But yeah, Relic actually does a lot of work in this format. But the best part about it really is that it just kind of cycles. And like, I think people might look at Relic and think it doesn't really fit, but I think that they're probably looking at that they're looking at it in like the rubric of like a burn type of deck, because at the end of the day, if you're playing like a mid-range type of deck, there are way worse things than just kind of 2 mana spread over 2 turns, draw a card. I will say briefly that it's a little bit of a non-bow with Hammer, and to a lesser extent Seasoned Pyromancer, but the fact that both of these don't really come online until turn 3 means that I generally find that if Relic's not at its best in the matchup, that you've got plenty of time to cycle it before before it starts interfering with those two cards. And if it is doing great work, then you're more than happy to have to do a little dance with either losing your hammer or your seasoned pyromancer tokens, or just being able to play around it and return them or flash them back, whatever you want to call it, before you crack it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's also a sideboard card that realistically, if I'm not playing it as a main deck, I really have to play it in the sideboard. Notice how the sideboard has no graveyard hate, and obviously I can't get away with that unless I'm playing Relic main deck. But since I am, I get to have more of the hate that I feel I need for other matchups.
Yeah. So speaking of other matchups, let's talk about the Amulet matchup with this deck. So what's your perception from playing in the past? What's your perception about the Amulet matchup? Favored, unfavored? What things are most important within the Amulet matchup in order to win, and what things make you maybe lose sometimes in that matchup?
Right. So, first of all, whether it's favored or unfavored, that's hard to say because I think actually when we've played, I think you've generally had at least a slightly better end of the stick usually. I mean, obviously I've won my share, you've won your share, but I think you've at least come out slightly ahead in our exchanges. And there might be something in particular you're doing different than other Amulet players. I'm not sure if you are on what's it called, Karn the Great Creator or not. You are, right? Because
Yeah.
that card is actually kind of a little bit of an issue, especially since it shuts off these like pirate spell bombs and relics just randomly. I mean, little things like that actually can make a big difference. Yeah, that probably is one big thing that helps your list in particular out a lot, because even if you don't have your answers, even if you can sometimes just either stall forever with Karn by like getting like a worm coil or something, or just I gotta ask though, why don't you guys play Oblivion Stone if not like as a dedicated sideboard card, as something to tutor up with Karn? I know it would blow up your amulets, but like I just feel like if that came down, you wouldn't necessarily have to keep stalling. You might actually just kind of destroy all my blood moons in one fell swoop, and then suddenly all your lands are unlocked. And I have to feel like you're kind of favored if the board is otherwise cleared. But maybe I'm missing something. But anyway, whatever it is that you're getting with Karn, it's either stalling the game a lot or it's helping out in some other way. That being said, I mean, obviously when Blood Moon is the literal key to this matchup, and once it's down, it generally makes a Titan into like basically just a 6/6 for the most part, which is actually sometimes. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I have lost some games just to Titan beats because that's also a thing. But yeah, I would say if it wasn't for you, and maybe there's what's his name, Faplauz or something, because obviously like he's a very strong player too. I haven't really kept track of how we've gone because I think we've only played a few times, and frankly most of them were when he was on that green-white Titan deck, which doesn't seem to see much play anymore. So I'm not actually sure, but unless I'm like facing the top players, I generally think I'm generally favored. I don't have too many losses. I mean, obviously you can't win every single time, and sometimes you get mana screwed, and sometimes they like have everything they need, and it just goes that way. But generally, I would think I'm favored, but then it also kind of depends on the specific build. I honestly don't know whether I'm favored or not against the Karn build, in particular, because that's a lot more tricky than the regular build without Karn. But I will say that the key to the matchup is definitely Blood Moon, and to a lesser extent, just kind of having a clock in general. Because if the game just stalls out forever, like eventually you guys draw some type of answer.
Yeah.
But unlike Tron, Blood Moon trumps all. Like we're not, unlike Tron, we generally cannot win before, like we're almost always going to have a better chance at winning to trying to resolve an early Blood Moon than we are trying to race, especially in this version. Like in the old Prowess version, sometimes I might just be able to race without Blood Moon, but in this version, just forget about it. So I'm not sure how else to really analyze it, but it really is a lot finding the Blood Moons and then trying to close the game as quickly as possible after that. Like at least on my end, on your end, there might be a lot of more interesting decisions, but on mine, that's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm the matchup is surprisingly closer than, I mean, I think it should be. Like in theory, when you look at a list that has 4 Blood Moons, 4 Magus of the Moons, and 4 Pillage, you would think that should be enough to beat the Amulet player. But I think Karn's quite important, and big mana has always been a problem for mid range, and so as you've turned this deck from an aggressive deck and into a mid range deck, I think one of the concessions that you make there is that that's going to make you a little bit weaker to some decks that are like just trying to go over the top, like you were saying, like Tron or Amulet, that are that are trying to just like do really big over the top things. Then again, you've respected that, and you've included the tools that you definitely have the tools within the deck to win the matchup. I think my impression is there's just so much hate in this deck that I can't imagine that like it's in theory that like I think playing enough matches over a long enough period of time, I would have to imagine you'd end up with a positive win rate against Amulet and against me. I think, like you said, we haven't played that many matches. I think, I go for the little percentage points that I can get. There's a lot of interesting decisions, and maybe, I get somewhat lucky sometimes. But yeah, Blood Moon is sort of the bane of every Amulet player's existence. It's like we want to play our, wild combo deck, and then somebody comes along with a Blood Moon and just says, your deck does nothing. So
well, it still produces 6/6 tramples though, so there is a and your deck still produces Karn, so
yeah, the Colossal Dread Maw aggro plan, which is yeah. So I guess so sideboarding, I imagine you're bringing in Magus and Pillage. I don't think you're bringing in Ensnaring Bridge or Trinisphere, but I don't know. What are you?
Well, correct. Well, Trinisphere is really more for like Storm, for like I haven't honestly experimented with too much. Definitely Phoenix. This deck just single-handedly shut a Phoenix deck down in my last league. Yeah. But this deck, not so much. I'm making you have to pay 3 for pack. That I don't think is where I want to be.
Right.
But Ensnaring Bridge you'd think would be great, but the problem I have with this, and to be fair, I haven't actually really tested it much, if at all. I can't remember if I've ever even tried bringing it in, but I played against Amulet enough to know that if I don't have a Blood Moon out, then Titan can grab a Tolaria West, which can grab an Engineer Explosives, and then that just answers the Ensnaring Bridge. And I guess it could have some application if I drop it after a Titan drops, when you don't know what exactly to fetch. But I just don't like when my hate cards are actually kind of answered by the card that they're trying to hate, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I don't actually have an Engineered Explosives in my main deck because of the Karns kind of take up the room, and so I can grab it from the sideboard, but I don't have it in the main deck. But certainly, like, if there's an Ensnaring Bridge but not a Blood Moon in play, I can just sort of Valakut you out of the game as well. Like
right, exactly. And generally the way I see it is the only way Ensnaring Bridge really helps, in my opinion, is if I've already got a Moon Effect down. But if I've already got a Moon Effect down, most of the time I'm kind of good as is. And Ensnaring Bridge, if anything, can slow me down. Exactly. My Bone Crusher Giants can't attack,
Yeah. And then, so what are you taking out? I assume Relics come out, and then what else usually?
I think where I was at as of my most recent match with Amulet Titan, which I can't remember when that last was, at least with this deck. I played Amulet a number of times with the Jegantha and the Companionless version that I was messing around with, but with this deck, I can't remember the last time that was, but I think I'm basically just bringing in Magus. The problem I have with Pillage is that it just doesn't do enough. Like, Pillage by itself buys me like maybe 1 turn, but like it's one of these cards that at best it buys me like maybe 1 turn, and at worst it kind of does literally nothing. Mm-hmm. But of course it can hit random amulets, and honestly against your deck I probably will have to bring it in since I happen to see your deck list and I know you've got Karn, and I think the last time we played, actually I was on the Jegantha version and you had Karn, so that's probably why it's obviously on my mind. But But yeah, I might bring it in against your version with Karn specifically. But even then, like it doesn't one shot the worm coil engine, although it's much more manageable to deal with the 2/3/3 tokens than to deal with a 6/6. But in general, if they're playing the non-Karn version, I don't think I really touch pillage. At the end of the day, I can't really keep a hand without a moon effect, as you could probably deduce. I That's basically just forfeiting. And I can't like pillage is another one of those cards that it's really only useful if I already have a moon effect.
Mm.
Sometimes it can kind of kind of keep you guys off of your green mana, but the fact that like as soon as a Titan hits, it grabs like two more forests, and then at that point, like pillage just kind of doesn't really make that big of a difference. Means that I think my sideboard plan is basically taking out, I think, relics for the magus, the magi of the moon, and I think that's about it. Believe it or not. Although there is some consideration. I'm actually thinking I might have taken out the Bone Crusher. I kind of go back and forth. Now it might seem weird to leave relic in, but that's just how much I need to see the moon effects. Is sometimes like, and because you guys also have um late what do you call it, a force of vigor, and
Mm-hmm.
ground foundation breaker, and like you guys have your answers. So like sometimes I feel like I need either multiple moon effects, or I need to like cycle into something that actually kind of hits really like even harder, like something like Fury, or to a lesser extent Hammer or Bogarden. But one of the main things about Bone Crusher that's actually not as good in this matchup is just that the stomp doesn't do as much,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times Bone Crusher is a little awkward because it's kind of hard to decide whether or not it's better to play out a Bone Crusher or to put an Obosh to hand. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually think Obosh is actually really key. Once I
Mm-hmm.
land a Moon Effect, Obosh is literally the key a lot of times to ending the game quickly. After that, so I'm not sure if you're playing Dismember or not, but that
Yeah,
could
I've
definitely buy
got
you a lot of.
two
Yeah, yeah,
dismembers in my board. Yeah,
right. You sent me the link, and I think I just managed to open it. Yeah, there it is, which also helps against Magus of the Moon, also.
yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm gonna take out I might just take out Bone Crusher, to be honest. Also because like sometimes you have to keep a 2 land hand with a moon effect, and there's no worse feeling in the world than not hitting your third land drop. And just cycling Relic helps with that.
Yeah, I mean, I one of the things that I think about with pillage, of course, from the amulet side, and maybe you've got experience from your side. I is at least on the play, if I go turn 2 bounce land and you go turn 3 pillage that bounce land, that can be a pretty big, like
Well,
that
it
can
slows
send
you
me back.
down.
That can
Yeah,
slow
it
me
slows you
down.
down for sure, but see, the problem on my end is that it slows you down, but I can't keep a hand with just pillage and no moon effect.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of like just the kind of cans I can keep. And
Mm-hmm.
so that leads to a lot of hands that I keep won't have pillage in them. I mean, they might not. And that leads to a lot of situations where I'm not drawing pillage until maybe like 20 cards deep or something, like turn 7 or something and beyond.
Right, and then you
And I
have the
think you can
moon,
see,
and it's
yeah,
like you don't want to just kill random mountain, you know.
right. Like I said, I think there could be some application, and it's weird that I'm still kind of going back and forth with sideboarding. You'd think I'd have it all pinned down by now, but like I have in the past sometimes taken Amulet off of their green mana, but I think part of that is also Amulet players not necessarily expecting it, and since you're expecting it, I guess there could be this mind game of am I going to bring it in, am I not? But I
Sure.
generally find that if the Titan player is expecting it, they generally don't get hated out too badly by it. At least that's just been my experience. But I
Yeah.
might bring it in again because more than anything because of Karn, maybe. All those artifacts it can grab.
Right. So from my side of the matchup, uh, this is really it's a tricky matchup, especially game one. If a moon comes down quickly on game one, it can be really hard because then really I'm just hoping that I land a Karn and that Karn is just somehow good enough. Or sometimes, maybe if I got a basic forest, I can Dryad and use the Dryad to get out of Titan, get some lands, get either like a second Dryad or a Karn. But a game ones always feel really, really rough to me from my side. Karn is definitely the most powerful thing that I can be doing in this sort of matchup. Post sideboard, usually my approach to this is I just try and take out all the cards that are bad under a Blood Moon effect, because I just imagine, like I said, you're mulling to moons basically. So I'm basically planning that Blood Moon is going to be on the table, or a moon effect is going to be on a table for at least some portion of any game. So I'm usually cutting the amulets and cutting the Urza Saga because they don't really do anything under Blood Moon. And I'm bringing in 2 Dismember, 3 Force of Vigor, and actually I bring in Foundation Breaker, Bajuka Bog, and Cavern of Souls. So like the Bajuka Bog, I mean, you have some graveyard stuff, but I'm not bringing it in for the graveyard things. I'm just bringing in Bajuka Bog and Cavern of Souls for land drops that don't immediately die under Blood Moon, like Urza Saga does, because I just sort of want to be making my land drops. And then eventually, hopefully, using a Force of Vigor or Dismember to answer whichever moon effect you have, and then hopefully land a Titan, and maybe that'll be good enough. Yeah, there could be a lot of games, like you were saying, where Karn can just grab a Wormcoil Engine, I can slam the Wormcoil Engine on the battlefield, and usually that single Wormcoil Engine is not enough to like single-handedly defeat your whole deck, but the amount of...
It does stall, yeah.
It stalls for so long. If I get 10 turns to draw my second Karn or something. I've even found... I've got an Ensnaring Bridge in my board, and under Blood Moon effects, like there can be times where just Karn can just grab Ensnaring Bridge, and some decks, let's say if you're not on Pillage, I can just have the Ensnaring Bridge, and maybe you aren't able to answer that, and then you're only able to burn me out. You're not able to get my creatures, and then, or not able to attack me with creatures, and that can sometimes also just buying time till I find my basics, find my Blood Moon answers kind of thing.
And for those watching, that's another reason why I don't bring Ensnaring Bridge in, is I have to imagine that if I mean, a lot of times my Amulet opponents who are playing Karn, they get Ensnaring Bridge against me, and I'm like, if they're bringing it in against me, then I can't imagine it's going to be that great for me to play. But anyway.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. I mean, Karn, one of the like unfortunate interactions of this deck is like, so Karn, like, let's say it's a game 1, sometimes I can blow up a moon with a Dryad, and this can come up game 1 or game 2 or 3. Use Dryad to get like engineered explosives on 3, but then the engineered explosives on 3 also blows up the Dryad, so like that can end up putting me back, to where maybe I blow up the Blood Moon, but before I'm really able to get my bearings, just like a Fury or an Obosh is knocking me down. So yeah, I think it's an interesting matchup. I think post sideboard it gets a lot better for me once I have all the moon answers. I think Karn's great. I think it's just, but I don't know. I just think it's really interesting. There's a lot of really interesting play patterns, and I look forward to playing these matches and talking afterwards. See if we learn anything or have any different evaluations afterwards. But I think I think I'm good to go if you're good to go.
Yeah, same here. I maybe I'll just say real quick. These matches may not necessarily be representative for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons is that I know what you're on. But of course, I pretty much know what you're on whenever we meet, to be fair. Yeah. Which does say something, by the way, because I'm usually, when I'm seeing your name, I'm usually mulliganing to Blood Moon. I think most of the times I think that's why you have the impression that game 1 is the worst for Amulet. Oddly enough, that wasn't necessarily my impression, but I think the reason why is because when I see your name, I know what you're playing, and I know to mulligan to Blood Moon. That's not the case for a lot of these other players who I'm not as familiar with. And then sometimes, like, my impression is it gets better for games 2 and 3, not necessarily because I have a ton of sideboard hate, although the Magi definitely help, but more so because I know I have to mull to a moon effect, if that makes sense. But in any case, this should be interesting. But these matches may not necessarily be representative. Obviously, you're considered like a top Amulet player. I built the deck, so I would hope that I'm like the top Obosh player. But again, since we know what each other's playing, that's not necessarily how these games are going to go in the wild. I have to imagine that favors me. And of course, you could end up having a really good showing. But I do think that that is worth noting one way or the other, however this goes.
That is good to mention. Yeah, there is the whole information thing, and yeah, I always think about that is like I play Amulet all the time, and everybody knows I play Amulet all the time, and I imagine people are making like mulliganing and other decisions against me based on knowing on Amulet, and I wonder how much that affects my win percentages. Maybe someday I'll start like a second account and just like with a different username and see.
Or or you could try a different deck like I did. That's one reason why I mean the main reason why is just because I can't help myself. Once I start brewing something, I go kind of nuts. But that is one nice perk of playing more than just one deck. And I even started adding Obosh to my mono black deck. So even if they see Obosh, they can't be 100% sure it's my red deck. It's probably like a 90% chance it's the red deck, but I don't know, just
Yeah.
little things like that. But whatever. And why don't we get to the
Yeah.
games?
Yeah. I mean, I do play other decks sometimes. Sometimes I've played like rhinos or humans, or I've got some artifact brews and like some elemental stuff. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, no matter what, I can never seem to do as well with any other deck as I do with Amulet. But I think
Yeah.
that's just maybe I've just put so many hours into it that this is all I'm good at anymore. Which is probably my own fault. Yeah, but I think we're good to go if you want to send the challenge.
All right. Yeah, let me get for some reason Zoom is making it so that it's kind of blocking everything else. But yeah, here we go.
All
Let me
right.
select the right deck because now I've got mono black Obosh. Can't I'm gonna make sure not to select that. There we go.
All right. I'm gonna
Uh
go ahead and mute my mic for the match, so I can make
okay.
commentary.
Okay, we're still gonna have the Zoom meeting up.
Uh, yeah. And then we can just mute our mics for the match, and then we can unmute afterwards.
Okay, works for me. All right.
All right. Being on the play is nice because it means an Urza Saga can get under Blood Moon. I think I like this hand. I do need a threat, but it has the potential to get a Titan down under Blood Moon, which seems important. I think I'll just lead on Amulet. The reason I want to lead on Amulet is it potentially allows me to play a turn 2 Karn if I top deck it. Okay, so we're looking to draw Karn, Titan, Talaria West, Summoner's Pact, Expedition map. Wooded Foothills is at least the basic forest for Under the Moon, which I have to imagine is happening right now. Right on time. That is sarcasm. I guess I'll just play out the Grazer. So Dryad dying to burn spells is game over, but I've kind of accepted that fate at this point. So I'm going to go with the sideboard plan I discussed. There's some consideration for if I want to leave these things in on the play. Just try and go fast, but I don't think this is like necessarily about going fast. I mean, the problem with the sagas and the amulets is that if you don't do something by turn 3, you're just not doing anything ever. I imagine pillages are probably coming in. This hand's got a basic forest, so that's important. Ragavan's scary. So hopefully the moon effect is Magus over Blood Moon. Summoner's Pact is a good draw. I I think I'm okay with the monkey hitting me. Get to Foundation Breaker and then Titan. There's the pillage. Yeah, that pillage looked pretty good. I'm gonna dismember Magnagus on the chance that I draw like a Karn or a basic forest. Karn's a good draw. Wormcoil can hopefully stall us out till we find an answer to this moon. Likely a Fury coming down here. Bolt. Fury is a problem if that's what's happening. Obosh to hand. That's beatable. Gonna leave the Wormcoil back for blocks. What do I even want here? Just Ballista on one to block the Fury? Blocks Fury, kills Ragavan. Yeah. Got stuck with too many cards in hand to be able to bridge. Alright, let's get... Pillage seemed pretty clutch. Okay, this hand is a fast Karn. Potentially a fast Titan if we draw lands. Like bounce land into untapped land would be pretty great. Maybe this was bad. Maybe I'm just supposed to grab engineered explosives. The stomp on the amulet in theory looks good, but that stomp on the amulet makes the stomp not go towards Karn. I can do better. This is better. Guess I'll get rid of Jukabog. So I'm not gonna exile this for Force of Vigor. I think I actually want to eventually hardcast this Force of Vigor. So my plan next turn is to Ballista for 2 to be able to kill the Magus, and then Force of Vigor so that I can resolve the Titan. I'm not going to block here. If there's a second Magus, I'm going to end up wanting to pump up this Ballista. I don't actually see a reason to kill this Magus just yet. I'm gonna get double Simic here and let the Magus ramp me a little. Yeah, so patience paid off. I think I just get Dryad here. Get Valakut, bounce land. I can replay the this seems like enough. I'll give this a shot. I guess I could have just Saga Amulet. making this play so that if he doesn't have land plus moon specifically, we can Titan next turn. If he does have land plus moon, we can Dryad. Yeah, to be expected. So Obosh is a problem. Now Spellbomb can kill Dryad. I think the Summer's Pact needs to get a Titan. I mean, the Dryad's gonna die, so I'm just like hoping basically to top deck Forest. I'm gonna take the damage here because I think I have to. Yeah, we're just dead. It's possible I need to mulligan more aggressively, but also, like, there's a certain amount of, like, just needing a critical mass of cards because you just need, like, a bunch of lands to be able to do things like cast Karn or, like, cast Titan once you force a Vigor. Like, all of that takes a lot of cards. The big things that make me want to keep a hand are, like, basic forests, fast ramp, Karn. Okay, this can be a basic forest. I'm gonna keep this. It's not like overly exciting, but Like, the post sideboard hands are not, in general, gonna look exciting. I'd really like to draw an untapped land on turn 2. That way I can just map for forest. Wonderful. So I'm going to do a Zuza first because I'd like the Dryad to come in after the moon. I'd like to avoid a pillage if possible here. Drawing a land would be good. Basic Forest Valakut makes sense to me here. Clean up the board a tiny bit. I imagine Moon is coming down this turn. Just start getting in. Get the rest of my forests. Guess I'll get Celestia Sanctuary Valakut. Now one card in hand is Obosh. So Obosh has to block the Titan, so the Dryad can attack. Maybe the attack was bad. I probably don't want to actually trade the Dryad with the Seasoned Pyromancer there. Okay, got there on the Colossal Dreadmaw aggro. Okay, this hand has got an answer to Blood Moon, so I think I'm gonna keep this hand and I'm gonna go Forest and then Vesuva Forest. I still think I want to go with my plan of Forest, Vesuva Forest. It just helps against pillage so much. I do have basics. Fury hitting Dryad means it's not hitting Karn, which is okay for me. Okay, I think this means Karn needs to grab Walking Ballista. We can also just Titan next turn and just build up mana for a big old ballista. I think I'm gonna get double bounce land. Just advance my mana. If Pyromancer and 2 tokens go at Karn, I'm gonna block a token so that Fury can't kill Titan. Maybe I'll play Grazer map with the... No, I want to hold the Grazer for Force of Vigor. I mean, I can always hardcast Force of Vigor. Yeah, I'll just make this a ballista for 6, and that way I get the Grazer down. I'm gonna block the Seasoned Pyro. If he casts Limb Breaths, then he's not playing Blood Moon. I think this should be it now. Oops, I tapped wrong. Doesn't matter, I got Crumbling Vestige. Can also get Valakut. Or get Dryad. Kill with Valakut. Hey, you there? Hello?
Yeah. See what I mean, man? Like,
Yeah.
you'd think like, you'd think I'd have this in the bag, but you
Yeah.
just always get, you in particular always get your Force of Vigors, always.
Yeah.
Which you might see me complain a little bit in some of my videos, but it's all in good jest. Everybody knows that for Hammer Time, I mean, Amulet is like the most fun matchup ever. A little sarcasm, but it is a very strong deck, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it helps that like I've got the 4 Summoners Pact that like also help me grab Foundation Breaker. That one game where you played a
I kissed the moon,
pillage.
so there is that. But you don't have. Actually, I totally forgot that you can tutor um, Foundation Breaker with Pact. I don't know why I forgot that. If I remembered that, I might have not been pitching the second Blood Moons as aggressively. My thinking was that, and this is something to keep in mind, I guess, in other against other Amulet matches. But my thinking was that basically you only play it as a one of. You're much more likely to see Force of Vigor. So like, what's the point of having 2 Blood Moons if both of them are going to get hit anyway? But I totally forgot that you can Pact for the Foundation Breaker. So it's not just a fun of. I'm used to a lot of players playing like one of cards with no way to tutor them for some reason. I don't understand the logic behind that, and I guess got kind of numb to that. But I totally think that that's not what's going on here, and it's definitely not just a fun of kind of. So it's like
Yeah,
probably I
it
might have been able I
exists.
might have been in a better spot if I would have kept that Blood Moon.
Yeah, it exists definitely for the purpose of being, Summoner's Pact to blow up a Blood Moon when that is what needs to happen. Like that's the whole point of Foundation Breaker in the 75.
That's the first time this has happened though. For some reason, I don't. You'd
Yeah,
think that that would happen a lot before, but
yeah,
maybe other players are playing that as like more than a one of or something. But every time it's been cast on me so far in the Titan matchup, it's been hard cast, and frankly, it hasn't even been hard cast that much as you might think. I've been the victim of force evacuation much more often for some reason.
yeah.
But
Uh,
it's something to keep in mind. I guess 2 Blood Moons still do have utility. Um,
Yeah, yeah. And like that's kind of, what I was talking about with my approach to like the post sideboard games is just once I've got the Foundation Breaker and the 3 Force of Vigors in, I've essentially got, 8 answers to Blood Moon itself, in the 3 Forces, the Foundation Breaker and the 4 packs. And then, like, for Magus of the Moon, I've got the 3 Karns and the 2 Dismembers are my answers to the Magus of the Moon. And of course, Karn is great under Blood Moon or Magus, either, regardless. So it's sort of like my plan for each of those matchups was just like, I'm keeping hands, like, prioritizing hands that have, like, forests and, like, Arboreal Gracer and, like, answers to Blood Moon were like the big things I liked in my like game 2 and 3 hands, and just like the thought like, okay, if he's mulliganing to 4 and 5 to get a Blood Moon, I can just sort of sit here and like cast my Dryads and cast my Karns and cast my Titans under the Blood Moon. Or like sometimes, it's like I know you're trying to Blood Moon on 3, so what I'm doing is like there'd be hands like, so I'd have like 2 untapped lands and a bounce land, and I would actually like. So normally the sequencing would be you'd go like untapped land, bounce land, and then untapped land to play Dryad. And like with the Blood Moon, it would be the sequencing would just be like untapped land. You play the Blood Moon, then I play the bounce land, which comes into play as a mountain, and I can like Dryad, and it's like the Blood Moon almost ramps me in like a scenario like that, you know.
Well, yeah, but that's why I kind of prioritize hands with Magus against
Yeah,
Amulet Titan because Karn is a very slow answer and they only have two dismembers. But
yeah,
I don't know if you noticed, but I actually had to take a lot of mulligans these games. I'm not
yeah.
sure exactly what was up. And one mistake I made is I think I did not follow my own advice in our earlier discussion of keeping in the relics and the I think what happened is you got to avoid this happening to you. That was not a very representative game, I think, where that Karn locked me out and like the second match, the first game of the
Yeah.
second match. Like, man, that was Den of the Bugbear just biting me in the butt. That's like if you've ever seen me take out Den of the Bugbear randomly, it's probably because something like that happened. But at the end of the day, every time something like that happens to me, it's kind of made up by the games that I win against against Azorius Control.
Mm-hmm.
After they like counter or deal with the Blood Moon or something, and Den of the Bugbear is just such a house against them. So like,
Mm-hmm.
but like it just sucks because that happens every once in a while, and then usually I'm like, screw this card, I take it out, but then obviously I bring it
Yeah.
back in because it's overall that doesn't happen that often,
Right.
but
Yeah.
like that was my third land drop. And to be fair, I guess I could have just not drawn a third land drop ever. That happens sometimes. But the bigger issue was that that kind of put me in the wrong mindset where I incorrectly because the problem is the Amulet players are all over the place. So like I had to have mixed experience against the Karn
Mm-hmm.
version and the non-Karn version. I think in the non-Karn version, it's pretty much a slam dunk that I have to keep in the relics, not because of the graveyard, but just because I can't miss my third land drop, and also like I can't miss my fifth land drop. I gotta drop Obosh on curve two or
Mm-hmm.
Fury. Um, so like just a cycling card is surprisingly helpful, but because I got locked out really bad in the second game, and I had all those mana rocks or not mana rocks, whatever you call them, all those artifact
Mm-hmm.
cyclers that didn't cycle or do anything. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll just play Bone Crusher then. And I don't know if you noticed, but Bone Crusher did a whole bunch of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I think the most it did was get pitched to Fury in one game, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's about the best use I've got out of this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I should have followed my own advice and just gone with the cyclers, and it might have helped out a little bit in some of the. There was another game where I think I missed a land drop somewhere. I can't remember where.
Yeah.
And also I shouldn't have pitched Blood Moon. I don't know. I've actually been going back and forth on, like how many moon effects I need. And like, I don't know if this means that I should just give up on the Titan matchup, but probably not, because obviously there was some play adjustments I could have made where I
Mm-hmm.
still might have been able to win. But at the same time, Titan's kind of demoralizing because like when you lose, it just feels like you never really had a chance. But obviously you have to like still go back and think about some mistakes you made, and
Yeah.
pitching that Blood Moon is the first thing that came to mind. That was definitely on my mind though when it happened. So I don't know. There might be other things that I'm missing.
Yeah.
Blood Moon kind of wipes the slate clean. When you lose to Blood Moon, I mean, when you lose to Titan, everything kind of goes blank, and you just kind of like you just want to grab a coffee or something, and then like
Yeah. Yeah.
you got to be able to like you can't just be like a screw Titan and then just like give it up, because obviously if any deck can beat it, it's probably the Obosh red deck. But it's obviously we just saw it doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah.
You still gotta play surprisingly tight.
Yeah, I think it's one interesting thing is we had the conversation about pillage before we started playing, and the one time you did cast pillage on the forest, if you hadn't cast pillage on that forest, then that turn I was going to Summoner's Pact for a Foundation Breaker and cast a Primeval Titan. So
Yeah, but I couldn't help but feel like I couldn't, like, if you notice all the other games, I was actually trying to pay close attention to whether
mm-hmm.
pillage would have helped. I don't think it would have, because
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't help but feel that I caught you off guard. Maybe in part because I was just saying that I don't necessarily bring in pillage. Honestly, I just thought like I haven't played a ton of the Karn variant, so I thought like maybe pillage is where I want to be. But even after I got you with that one game, I just couldn't help but feel like I don't think you prioritize getting forests enough. And I'm just like, I don't think this is going to happen again. And maybe I'm assessing this wrong, but I think once that happened to you, I don't think you set yourself up to have that happen again. But I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But that was why you didn't really see pillage after that.
I mean, I was always kind of aware that like pillage, there's a good chance it's in. Like I'm always sort of playing around it. I think that hand is just like you make the plays that you can within a game. Like it's not like I can make myself have an extra forest or like there was anything I could really have done to play around that pillage that game. But Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
obviously it's hard to
Like,
tell from my side, but yeah, I wasn't
yeah,
sure
it's
if you were.
it's it's like the other thing about pillage is like, uh, it's just like keeping me off lands sometimes can be like hard for me. Like, let's say, like, not being able to get my sixth land drop for the Primeval Titan or the Wormcoil engine can sometimes be like a big thing in the matchup. So, I think it's like it's a card that like definitely like does something in a matchup where like I think there's a lot of cards that like it in a lot of scenarios aren't necessarily doing much, and like there's definitely times where pillage doesn't do anything, but then there's also times where pillage keeps me off my second green or my first green or my sixth land drop or my fourth land drop, like, and even like doing that for a turn or something can be pretty big, especially like you know uh once you're getting into your fury and your obosh stuff. I don't really have a lot of time to stumble, so I
Right.
don't.
So the issue was that I was consistently the 8 cards I was swapping
Mm-hmm.
mages and pillages between were the relics and the bone crushers.
Mm-hmm.
I was taking the relics out ever after that second game, at least as best as I recall. Obviously, the footage will shed more light on that, but I think after that second match, the first game, I think after that I pretty much was taking out relics each time,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I was taking I just started taking out relics and just putting in mages. But in retrospect, either I should have been taking out Bone Crusher for mages, or I should have been taking out relic and Bone Crusher for pillage. But you see, the issue is that I need the lightning bolts both because I have to be able to deal with dryads sometimes in combination. Obviously, it has to be in combination with another burn spell, but it's my cheapest. I mean, it's the best
Yeah.
burn spell for a reason. I do sometimes side out lightning bolt. Like sometimes against Azorius control, lightning bolt is at its worst because
Mm-hmm.
you don't really usually burn them out in this game, and it only really is good for taking down planeswalkers. And it doesn't always do that, but obviously this is a matchup where there still is a lot of creatures you can hit, or at least partially hit. But the main thing is actually I like that this can one shot Obosh under. I mean, this can one shot Titan under Obosh, which didn't come up these games, but that does come up. That does come up more than more than you might think.
Yeah.
So I don't want to side out Lightning Bolt. I obviously can't side out Ragavan because that's we
Yeah.
didn't see a lot of turn 2 Blood Moons. To be fair, we didn't see a lot of turn 1 Arboreal Grazers from you either, which is kind of the natural answer to turn 1
Yeah.
Ragavan. Although sometimes I can do turn 1 Ragavan into turn 2 Fury into Blood Moon, but then
Yeah.
sometimes I regret that if a Dryad comes down next turn anyway. But you get the point.
Yeah.
Pirate Spellbomb and Relic. In retrospect, I don't think those should come out
Because
because
hitting
again,
land
like
drops. What
yeah,
about
see,
what about hammer? Like, I'm not saying
okay,
all the hammers, but like, is there
yeah.
anything of like trimming, like even
Well,
one
see,
hammer
now see,
or?
the issue is with Hammer is that this is my it's both. Oh, it's like Lightning Bolt. It's a way I can one shot Titan if I have an Obosh out, and also it can combine with Lightning Bolt. And you can combine with Lightning Bolt to also take down a Titan, even if I don't have an Obosh out, which that didn't come up, but that also comes up more than you might think.
Yeah.
Also, if the games really stall out, oh yeah, also if somehow I deal with a Wormcoil engine token, a lot of times my best way of breaking those long stalls that can happen when that comes out is recurring the hammer and
Mm-hmm.
picking off those tokens with the hammer. I know it looks like such a janky card, and it didn't necessarily show its best side in these matches, but if you look
Mm-hmm.
at this objectively, I think Bone Crusher did a whole lot more of nothing. Actually, to be fair, they both did kind of nothing, but to
Yeah.
be fair, I
No.
think Bone Crusher was kind of the worst card of these two, and that's why that usually gets cut first, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
I don't know. Like, I'm just saying, like, though, like, even like just taking off like one hammer, like say like if you're taking out the bone crushers, take off like one hammer, even like one relic, and then like two pillages in,
Yeah,
like.
see, yeah, I mean, if I do end up bringing pillages in, you're probably right. I'm not beyond bringing in some of these as a two of. I believe it or not, I do that sometimes.
Yeah.
But see, the issue is I really don't want to trim the relics. Like, let me explain. Um, as you may have been sensing in some games where I was stumbling on my mana, the reason why that happens, in addition to just mana screw just being a thing in Magic, it's specifically the dynamic of this matchup where I have to mulligan to a moon effect. And when that happens, sometimes I have to keep hands that have a moon but have wonky mana. And that's why like these fairly innocuous looking cards, I really should have learned. I really should have just followed. It's also just been a while since I played this deck, period. But like, believe me, the more and more I play this against Amulet, the more and more I'm convinced, even against the Karn version, most likely, because I just don't think that's usually going to come down fast enough all the time that it's going to punish me too much for these. They plus I can also pitch them with Valakut and Seasoned Pyromancer. But the mana is just. Let's put it this way: as long as I can get to 5 mana, I've always got something to do with Obosh. Mana Screw is always a little bit more of a concern in this deck than Mana Flood, due to the fact that I've always got Obosh to work toward, if that makes sense. And that's why these
Pyromancer is a good like flood insurance. Fury is a good flood insurance. Yeah,
and Valakut Awakening's good flood insurance. Yeah, exactly. Like the deck is built to where flood is not so much the issue. The issue is more mana screw, and that's why like also Pyrite Spellbomb, which also looks janky, is way better in this deck than it looks. I hear everybody when they rationalize why I'm playing Pyrite Spellbomb, they always talk about Pro Red, and needless to say, that is probably the main reason. But the secondary reason is just the cycling in a deck like this is surprisingly important. But as you can see, the problem is that it's just so hard to make room for the pillages. I could try to trim maybe 2 hammers, 2 pillages. Now that you mention it, going forward, I might probably take out the Bone Crushers for the mages. I might not be on 4 mages though, because it's kind of, I'm not sure how the Trinispheres are gonna pan out, and if these get replaced by something else, I don't know how that changes everything. In the past, actually, you'd be surprised, against most other Amulet players, I can usually be just fine with 2 mages, but it also feels weird against a lot of other Amulet players. It feels like I always see like sometimes even both the mages as I have, even if I've only got 2. But somehow against you, it feels like either you always have an answer to them or I just don't see them. But that could just be survivorship bias or whatever you call it. Like when you.
I mean, there's also the thing of like, I think I play more answers to mages than like the average person, like, because I play Karns, not everybody plays Karns, and I play Dismembers, not everybody plays Dismembers. I mean, I built my list. And, like, if you look at my sideboard, I've even said about my sideboard, like, the Dismembers are in my sideboard for Magus of the Moon. The Force Vigors and the Foundation Breakers are in my sideboard for Blood Moon. Like, there's other applications of those cards, but, like, really, like, the main way that Amulet loses is to Blood Moon. And, like, so it's like Karn is a great way to not lose to Blood Moon. Force Vigor, Dismember, Foundation Breaker great ways to not lose to moon effects. So I've just sort of I've tried to, as much as possible, make my list in such a way that it's just not going to lose to Blood Moon as often. So like it makes sense that if I'm playing an Amulet list that's tuned to do well against Blood Moon, that facing a Blood Moon deck, I'm going to do better than the average Amulet person. But that doesn't mean like I'm not making concessions elsewhere, or that you're not going to do well against other Amulet players with like this sort of configuration of your deck.
Right, and it's also like, and to put things in perspective, I think when everything was said and done, it was like 4-3. I won the first 2 of match 1. You won the second 2 in match 2, and then you were 2-1 in the third one, if I remember correctly. So like if you think about it, still pretty close. It obviously
Very close. And I was on the play all 3 matches. Like, I mean, I only won game 1, but like it was like there's like also variance there. I might have just got the good side of variance. I mean,
yeah, true. But I played you enough to know that there's something else going on. I even commented, I think, in my most recent video where I happen to be reporting when you were in it, where I'm like, Puthin White always has a Force of Vigor. And sure enough, when I saw your list, you're playing 3 of them, and I'm like, I'm a little surprised you weren't playing 4. I thought you might be playing 4, but still 3 is still a very hefty number.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I think other people play like 2 or something, and definitely that. I don't know why you wouldn't. I might even consider playing all 4, but obviously I understand Karn puts enormous pressure on the sideboard. You never quite answered my question though earlier about like why isn't it that you guys in general, but you in particular, don't play
Oblivion Stone?
Oblivion Stone.
it's
maybe because it would just work against me. You have to admit it would
yeah
probably I would probably have to say that I'm definitely decently unfavored if you have access to that. Well, maybe I
yeah
shouldn't say decent. I don't know. But I would definitely say I'd at least be unfavored, maybe even decently unfavored, because that card is always my biggest fear. But anyway, I'll let you answer.
Yeah, I think it's part of it is just that it is like a lot of mana investment for it. Like it's really good for, I think, you know, if you're in a matchup where your opponent is playing a Blood Moon and trying to lock you out with the Blood Moon. But I think that there's not that many decks that are doing that in particular. I think most Blood Moon decks that exist right now are decks that are like running, you know, like two Blood Moons or like two Blood Moons in the board. So like, you know, I think of like Pen Sword's Blue Moon list, or like there's Murktide lists that like throw Blood Moon in the board sometimes. And it's like the decks with like these you know, other game plans that are sort of naturally good against what I'm doing. There just isn't time to play the Karn, then play the Oblivion Stone, then crack the Oblivion Stone. Like the number of games where that's going to happen. And there's you know, like
But you
we
usually
talked
do have
about,
like 8 mana pretty easily, though, don't you?
not actually. I mean, the thing about like Amulet is I feel like there's so much of this like deck building with Amulet where people are like always wanting to put in like more expensive cards in the deck, and like really like the deck is actually very tight on mana all the time, and that's it seems strange, but like mana is always like the tightest thing. Like if you look at my list, like my entire sideboard, like not counting the card board, my entire sideboard can be cast for 4 mana. Like the Dismembers are 1 mana, the Foundation Breakers are 2 mana, and the rest of it's free. Like
The big mana is mostly focused on the Titans, I'd imagine. So
yeah,
like
it's like
that's why it always feels like you guys are like getting the perfect mana right when you need Titan, but that's on purpose because that's
yeah.
your always going to be your top end, basically,
Right, the
right?
Titan's the top end. Everything when you're not, it's sort of when you have mana, you're wanting to cast Primeval Titan. When you don't, and then like the rest of like playing the games is trying to like figure out what you do when you don't have the mana to play Primeval Titan.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so you know your deck better than me. I
Yeah.
mean, for what it's worth, if Obosh ever becomes a big problem or something, I
Mm-hmm.
hate to give advice to the enemy, so to speak.
Yeah.
Not that you are personally are managing anything, but you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
obviously, Oblivion Stone is probably
Yeah.
it. I would probably have to start playing Pithing Needle or something as a preemptive measure. But that does bring me into another question that I have because I haven't necessarily been reading a ton of articles or other things on like how the Titan players, you know, what how they perceive the rest of the meta and so forth. What exactly is Titan's bad matchups? Because as we saw here, you know, even if on a better day I might have come out ahead, I think it's safe to say this is at the very least not a terrible matchup.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't think it's a terrible matchup for me either. But I even say in my videos, I wonder sometimes what are Titan's bad matchups because if we're not crushing Titan, which we're certainly not, it's not we're not always getting crushed by it. But you know, if we're not crushing Titan, then who is? You
I
know.
mean, you know, there's like the inside joke among the Amulet Titan community of like hashtag no bad matchups, which like it's a joke, but there's also like a bit of truth to it. There are okay, so of like tier decks right now, the bad matchups. The worst matchup would be Rhinos is the worst matchup because
Oh man, that
they
deck.
they so like post sideboard it's better for us if we're against the Yorion Rhinos, like the Doomwake Yorion Rhinos. That's okay, but like the Tamura Rhinos deck, like post sideboard, they just have like a bunch of Force of Negations, a bunch of Force of Vigors, Blood Moons, and like just fast Rhinos, and they can like ice our bounce land to like slow us down a turn, and yeah, it can just like the Rhinos is just it's a rough matchup. It's like winnable, but you know things have to line up right.
Because they play Blood
Uh,
Moon too, right?
yeah, they play Blood Moon, and that's harder for us because like you know if there's just a Blood Moon and like a Seasoned Pyromancer on the board, like I can usually like play a Karn, maneuver my way out of there. If there's like a Blood Moon and a 2/2 and 2/4/4 tramples on the board, I need to do something really really quickly before I'm just dead. That's just like a 2-turn clock, and then all of a sudden next turn maybe I answer the Blood Moon, and next turn they just violent outburst and like hit me for 13 and have 2 more rhinos, and at that point like Primeval Titan isn't even good enough, and it's like, oh well, maybe Titan would be good enough with like double Amulet or Dryad, but like they've Furied my Dryad, or they've Force of Negation to my second Amulet, and all of the sudden,
for sure.
Yeah, the rhinos just get there.
That's another deck that I kind of wonder what are their bad matchups, because I don't think any one of our decks ever feels that favored, if any. I mean, most of my decks actually feel kind of like a dog to that matchup, but a few of the ones where I feel like I think I'm favored, like the Blink Blade version in particular, the white one. I think all that creature removal and life gain, and Flicker Wisps on the tokens. Like anyway, that's neither here nor there. But the point is, even the matchups where like I feel like I've got kind of my best game, it still feels like, man, they've always got some trick up their sleeve. They've always got answers to your answers, and I'm like, I'm curious about what other decks are up there, because I'm also genuinely curious what Rhino's bad matchups are, for that matter. But you're not the Rhinos master, but
yeah,
anyway,
I've played a little bit of Rhinos, but
right, you did. So I'm sorry.
I don't know. I don't think I've played it enough to specifically say what the bad matchups are. I think I imagine like in the long run, blue-white control right now is a hard matchup just because they have a lot of good interaction. They have 3 mana Teferi, which is a beating, and they have Chalice of the Void. So I imagine blue-white control is pretty good against the Rhinos deck. I don't know, but like I feel like the decks that are at the top decks right now, I feel like the top decks all have game against each other, and then all have game against just about anything. I don't think any of the like top meta decks right now really has any unwinnable matchups, I think, which is kind of different than like we've seen in the past, where sometimes there'll be some deck on top that just really has a weakness. But everything, I feel like post-Modern Horizon 2, like everything's so like value oriented and resilient that like even a deck like Hammer Time, which is like you would think like, oh, a Force of Vigor is going to be really good against like killing their sagas and their hammers and stuff. Like they're just gonna like Luris, and like they can be really resilient against the hate. So it's
right.
Really we're living in a new world where it's really really hard to hate out just about any of the top decks right now.
Right. I think that's also another issue that I've been having. Well, I mean, because aside from the fact that I've been messing around with like a lot of these other decks, which I'm going to be honest that they're probably not up there with any of the variations of this red deck. Particularly, Blood Moon is just a very good card, and it's just no other card. I think even Chalice of the Void doesn't quite give you as many free wins, in my opinion. But aside from messing around with a lot of other decks, I even when I play the red deck, it just doesn't feel like you said, there isn't too many like kind of like unwinnable matchups that at least I have that. Neither I don't necessarily feel like I have too many unwinnable matchups, not that I can think of at least, but also at the same time, like Uro was almost a buy, believe it or not. Some people have a hard time believing that, but that was actually the main reason I was the trophy leader for I think the season before. Actually that must have been several seasons ago, but whenever it was that Uro got banned, like basically when Uro got banned, that was actually kind of bad for us because like there isn't quite a matchup like that where it's like it really feels hard to lose. So it's a very interesting time period. All the top decks feel very strong. They are beatable, but they're also such a slog. So
one thing I've been thinking about, because I was thinking about the Titan matchup in particular for this deck, is a lot of times when I end up losing to people, it's not because of necessarily what seems like the best game plan against me of like the Blood Moon, Magus of the Moon. Like usually Blood Moon is like an important aspect of me losing, but like I don't know. I feel like I lose a lot more to just like random cards that I am not prepared for than like just like the game following like the normal sort of script of how you think I would lose, which is Blood Moon into Fury into you like
Obosh.
Obosh, yeah. Like
Obosh is ultimately the card that wins the game, not Blood Moon. But
right, right.
yeah.
But like, something like so for example, something like Goblin Rabble Master that can just like close out the game like really quickly on its own has been an issue for me before. I don't know. I'm trying to think because with mono red in particular, it's harder to like surprise me. There's other colors of decks where like I think there's like cards that are just like underplayed, like in like black and blue, like nobody's playing Shadow of Doubt, and that card can just like absolutely like get me sometimes. And I think
Oh yeah.
it's like a great card because like it also just cycles, like which is like not bad, but like if I Summoner's Pact and somebody Shadow of Doubts me and then I don't get a Titan and I still have
And
to
you still
pay.
have to pay. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
can only
that can,
imagine.
or like just like Chalice of the Void out of a deck that I'm not expecting Chalice of the Void on zero, because Chalice of the Void on zero can be like a really tough thing because it shuts down my Summoner's Pact, which also makes Talaria West not a Titan, which also makes Expedition Map not a Talaria West, not a Summoner's Pact, not a Titan, which
Titan.
also makes Urza's Saga not Expedition Map, Talaria West, Summoner's Pact, Titan. So it takes it down from like this, whatever, 15
Yeah.
Titans or whatever it is down to 4 or something, or like Lavinia or something. And I'm trying to think if there's anything like that in red that's just like a sideboard card that like is off the radar that like because I really think if people uh want to beat Amulet, there is like the plan of just like playing a pile of Blood Moons, but I really think like one of the really interesting ways to get at
Well,
Amulet is just
yeah.
to is just to like uh is just to
Something outside of the box. Yeah.
just like something outside of the box that is good against me, but is not the thing that I am prepared for. I'm siding out all my amulets, and I'm bringing in all my Force of Vigors, and then you play this card, and it's just like very, very good against me.
Well,
Yeah,
Necromentia in the black deck has been
yeah,
a beating,
oh
but
yeah,
unfortunately there isn't. I mean, so that makes me wonder about like surgical extraction. The problem is I need to get a Titan into the graveyard before that does
yeah,
anything, and I don't know really how I could splash black, but at that
yeah.
point it's not monocolor anymore, and it's kind of a different
Right,
thing.
right,
Which
and it's
I would
not
love
like
to see some people like try to innovate this deck because I'm just not going to do that. But I would love to see some people try to like make a red black MHayashi Obosh type of deck, but whatever. That's neither
right.
here nor
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I don't think like you want to make concessions in your deck building to like beat Titan. Like you're certainly not like a splasher. I mean, I'm not even that a big Titan's not a big part of the meta or anything. But I'm just saying like if keeping an eye out for like the sideboard cards off the beaten path might be a good like thing to look into to just because
Um,
if you can catch the Titan player off guard, that can really be a good way to win.
yeah, I mean, there's also Torpor Orb, but because two
Yeah.
problems. I mean, first of all, it shuts off Obosh, but
Obosh,
second
yeah.
of all, it dies to all the other artifact
It
hate that
also
Soul
shuts
Raise
off
3.
Fury.
Right. Yeah, it actually just makes Fury plain terrible. And it
Yeah,
shuts off Seasoned Pyromancer, so it's
yeah.
um
It does shut off Foundation Breaker, which is something like so it doesn't die to Foundation Breaker because Foundation Breaker gets shut off by it. But it does die to Force of Vigor. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Torpor Orb is like a consideration for like a Jengatha list because it's also so good against elementals. But
as far as I know, there's like main ways to attack Titan. Attack the mana, which is Blood Moon, attack the Titans out of the library themselves, like Necromentia, or in theory, if you have just a ton of hard removal or something, but ideally like just kill it out of the library preemptively, like with Necromentia, and also the last what did I just say? Hit it from the library, hit the mana. Oh yeah, and just hit the
The face.
hit the searching somehow.
Oh yeah.
Whether that's from Torpor Orb or like Shadow of Doubt or something. Like yeah,
Yeah.
hit the searching, hit the uh um yeah, hit the mana, or just
Yeah.
prevent it from coming out at all. But like, so, yeah, so
Yeah.
I don't really know, because unless there's any search hate in red, I maybe have to splash a color. But you know what?
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's probably just is what it is.
Yeah.
Uh
I don't know if there's anything that you can do that
mm,
like to attack the like artifact angle of it too, because it seems like Ballista coming down and killing Magus is like a big problem. I don't know if there's any way to
well,
prevent.
there is a way. I mean, there was a time when first there was a brief period of time when Amulet was like absolutely everywhere. I don't know if I don't know if it was just I was seeing it everywhere in the leagues. I don't know if anybody else noticed it like I did, because it might have just been the luck of the draw where I just happened
Mm-hmm.
to be getting paired with Amulet like all the time. But if you look at my Twitter history, I there was a solution where I was consistently bidding Amulet. It was basically play 4 Blood Moons, 4 Mages, and 4 like what is it called? Blood Sun. And
Mm-hmm.
somebody also mentioned, what about Alpine Moon? Although Alpine Moon, I don't think you really care about that because you've got too many lands that do too many things. But you get the point. With
Yeah.
like all of those effects, I mean, yes, I was consistently beating Amulet Titan, but when I started facing other decks, it's just like, Blood Sun is just kind
Yeah.
of.
Maybe
But you know, but there
maybe
is. I mean, if I really would have beat Amulet Titan, there is options. It's just
I wonder
I
if
just have to
there's
mangle my
any.
sideboard.
I wonder if there's any argument like if you would want like Pithing Needle in this matchup for Karn. But then again, Pithing Needle, same problem is just like getting swept up in the Force of Vigors. Yeah.
Yeah, for Planeswalkers, I was actually thinking about that card that like deals 5 damage each Planeswalker at end of turn or
Mm-hmm.
something.
Doesn't seem
But
like it's great. I mean, like it.
and it's
It's
also an
the
enchantment too that gets hit by
yeah.
Force of Vigor for what it's
Yeah,
worth.
it's
But
like I
I don't
mean
know.
you can basically accomplish the same effect with a lightning bolt. Like as long as I minus the card, like you
And
know
if you
you
plus it, it's out of range anyway. So yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, honestly, the best weapon for the red decks is the moon effects, and it's
Yeah.
just when you bring in as like at the end of the day, like there's always like this cat and mouse thing. I mean,
Yeah.
if you really wanted to keep beating through the hate, like I could fill my sideboard with just moon effects, and you could fill your sideboard with just artifact and enchantment hate. But at that point, we're just metagaming against each other.
Right.
But like, so there is answers, but it's just I don't know if there's like a universal type answer. I mean, Torpor Orb is probably the best solution that I thought up off the top of my head, but it's just that may be something to keep in mind for like the other versions. I just don't know that this version can justify it, because it's not that I can't play a card that conflicts with Obosh. It's just that its stock goes way down, because then it extremely narrows the matchups where I want to bring it in.
Yeah.
Because if there's a matchup where it marginally helps, I just can't bring it in because it conflicts with Obosh. But like,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Anyway,
Like I feel like also just like maybe the thing that I want most from the red side of this that I'm not seeing is uh like killing me quickly. Like
well, that's just kind of a different build. That's kind of more like the
yeah.
Jagenta build
Yeah,
in a way.
I'm not saying like rebuild it. I'm saying like I don't know if there's a sideboard card like I said like I don't know if there's a I don't think like Rabble Master in particular. I think that card is flawed, but like something like that just like on its own presents a quick enough clock and can also like help deal with Karn quickly or something. But I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, or also maybe I should just experiment with trying pillage a little bit more.
yeah,
Maybe I misassessed it. I mean, obviously it did wonders in that first
yeah.
game, but
And like
I just really thought that you just thought I wasn't going to bring it in because I was kind of downplaying it. I only
mm-hmm,
brought it in because because here's my thinking. My thinking at the time was just you've got Karn. These things could get shut off. So maybe I don't want the relics, so I brought in mages for them. And then I'm just like, I just remembered how much I didn't like Bone Crusher. So I'm just like, okay, well, Pillage is not great, but maybe it's better than Bone Crusher.
mm-hmm,
But then obviously since then, I kind of, I don't know. But it just, even when it worked, it just felt like my perception. So I guess maybe you couldn't play around it in that game, but my perception was that you just forgot about it or something. But maybe that was, so that's I was wrong. Maybe I need to reassess and try it more. Um, it's just every time I draw it later in the game, it's not that great. But early in the game, it definitely can do work. So I don't. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean I couldn't play around it because like I needed the forest in play to play the Dryad to be able to try and play the Titan, like to even like get out the mana to try and do everything. So it was just sort of like a situation of uh like I couldn't really do anything about it, and it was just sort of like a make 'em have it kind of situation. Yeah.
And you know what the funny thing is? Actually, in that match, I was kind of I had a Magus in my hand as well, and I was really close to playing it. My concern was I was going to pillage that forest. You were going to end a turn Force of Vigor, and then drop a Titan on your turn. Whereas if I played Magus, I don't think you had a mana up for a Dismember or something. So I thought like, well, this is a way to guarantee you're not going to get Titan. But then I just thought if I drop the Magus, then you just undo all the mana screw with a Dryad, and I'm just like, oh, whatever. I'll just make him have it, I guess. And
Mm-hmm.
but I, it's weird because even though that worked spectacularly, my thought process was just like, man, this was so close to being terrible. I'm probably the only person who thinks like this in a way, but like even if I win with a card, I'll dock it negatively in my mind because it felt so close to being terrible if you just had Force of Negation. Which, to be fair, in an alternate universe, you may have had that, and then suddenly it doesn't look so impressive, right? But whatever. I mean, that's just my line of thinking. But at the
If
same
I
time,
had,
like,
yeah.
there's other ways I could approach this, and also there's just, the more I honestly, you probably have more experience playing decks that are similar to mine. I doubt that a lot of people are on Obosh Red specifically, but let's also like factor something else into play. I guarantee you have a lot more experience playing mid-rangey type of decks. Not this deck in particular, but other decks that kind of follow similar philosophies than I have experience playing Titan specifically. And I probably have played against Titan more than most people because I am online a decent amount naturally. But still, Titan is only a small fraction of the meta. But there are an infinite number of like different mid-range variants. So like so there is this element where I think you're getting a lot more practice against kind of facing the fundamentals of the kind of deck that I'm playing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like I said, I'm still figuring out the Titan matchup. You'd think I'd have it all figured out now, but like I'm still kind of going back and forth, like discussing it over with you, kind of how to approach it. And
Yeah.
once I do establish a strong play pattern, I might my win rate, which is already not bad. Like I said, I think against most other Titan players, I think I'm actually on the winning end. I mean, I do. I mean, if you look at my videos, I think like I said, most of my matches probably came against you and maybe it's the other top Titan players. I forget other than Fopplaws or whatever his name is. I forget the other ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
House
or
of
Bruno,
Mana,
or
Jose
what was the other guy?
Moniz,
Uh,
Jose Moniz, maybe.
yeah, that's him. Jose Moniz, yeah, him too. It's always like Jose Moniz, you, and I haven't played Fopplaws that much to be honest. And like I said, mostly it was the green white. But yeah, it was Jose Moniz. He's the other guy. It's you two. I think that's like most
Mm-hmm.
of my losses came from you two. I think I'm mostly wins against the other people, so I might even have a decent record. But whenever I see you guys, I'm like, oh, this is not going to be this is going to be more tricky. And it's not to say like even with the other people, it always feels like they're really close to winning too. So it's obviously
Mm-hmm.
it's like it is what it is. Uh, but yeah, but there is this element of if I really get a lot of play practice in it, it could improve. But one reason why I tell myself that sometimes is because there was a time period where like remember Death Shadow was all over the place back when I think it was I forget what that set was, a Zendikar Rising, because the same set that brought us Magmatic Channeler. Because I remember when I started experimenting with Magnetic Channeler, that like because the Swords of the Skycleaves came out, and there was a brief period of time when Shadow variants were like literally everywhere, and especially Swords of the Skycleaves in particular, because none of us had that much experience playing against it at the time. It was just brand new. There was a brief period of time where I legitimately was concerned that I might have an unavoidably like almost auto loss type matchup against Shadow. And I know that, and for regular viewers, I mean, that might be surprising because if you look at most of my videos, I'm doing fairly well. And I think I overall have, a very decent win to loss ratio against Shadow, whether they have Skyclave or not. But the reason specifically is that there was a lot of very specific play patterns. Specifically, what I didn't realize at first against the Shadow decks was how critical Blood Moon was. Specifically, actually, it was against the red-black version. By the way, do you prefer if I call you Bruno or Punt and Wine or whatever?
You could call me Punt. You can call me Nicholas. I don't mind.
Oh, Nick. Oh,
Uh,
Nick. Sorry. Or Nicholas. Yeah. Sorry. Bruno's your last name.
but
I just.
I'm actually gonna need to get going
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
quick here.
No
So
problem. No
this is a
problem.
really good conversation. And definitely like there's going to be comments on the videos, so we can definitely continue
Oh
this
yeah, for sure.
conversation in the comments. And I, I wouldn't mind maybe uh, you know spending more time talking with you or doing another
No,
video sometime.
no,
Uh,
don't worry about it. I understand. I'm a rambler. I could literally talk for
no,
like 6 more hours, and
I
you probably need to keep me in check more than my. I'm probably relying on you to keep me in check even more.
I'm the same way. I could also talk about this stuff for hours and hours, but my partner's letting me know they need my help right now.
Yeah. So
But
yeah.
before we get going, is there anything you want to plug? So I'm gonna put your link for your Twitter and your YouTube page in the YouTube description of my video. Is there anything else you want plugged that people should check out for you?
Um.
Got like a
Well, there's my Magic Matt channel. I'm sorry, there's my MHayashi gaming channel, I guess, which
Mhm.
is for like the black and the white and the green. Um, it's kind of there's a story behind why I have a second channel, but I'm not going to get into that. I'll spare you that for now. But
Okay.
suffice it to say that I guess there's that. I don't know. For anybody watching, obviously, Nicholas has got great commentary too. So I guess that's my plug of you, but obviously it's your show, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. But thanks, man.
Yeah, so check out M. Hayashi on Twitter. He always posts cool deck lists and great commentary. Check out his YouTube page. I love watching his videos, hearing through his thought process, and I really think you're one of the most uh, like innovative deck builders that I've seen. Anytime I see a deck that you've built, I immediately know that you've built it. Like your signature, you have a signature, and it's really really very interesting. And like especially like as an amulet player, I'm always looking at mana bases, and I really see you as somebody who puts thought into your mana bases. So yeah, just really good deck builder, really great commentary. So I strongly recommend everybody follow M Hayashi, and I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Hey, sounds good. And yeah. Could I just real quick though before we
Yeah.
go? I wasn't able to record on my end because for some reason it said like I needed permission or something, and so I don't know if you want to
Okay.
cut this last part out or not, um, but yeah, like I just if you could send it to me, that'd be great.
All right. I will do.